Welcome to another episode of Phrasally Verbocious. We have an extra special podcast this week as we have three teachers online. First, we would like to mention we appeared on a Pearson blog this week of the top 7 English teaching podcasts to listen to. So Chris and myself were very surprised by that. So thanks very much for everybody listening. Surprised and delighted, yeah. Quite a lot of big names in the ELT world and our names with it. Right, number 4 in the list, which is very nice. So this week, thank you. So this week we are joined by Claudia Schiavon, who I have known since the time of the dinosaurs, and has been an influence on me becoming a teacher. So it's her fault. Claudia, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Good morning, and I'm happy I was the one who's taking you into teaching. I'm very happy about it. Okay, what can I say about myself? I've been a student of English since the dinosaurs, as Alan has said. I studied English at university, I studied linguistics, and then I turned, I already knew I would have become an English teacher because I really loved it. And I switched to teaching English, and I majored in teaching English. Then I started teaching when I was at university. Started teaching at courses, one-to-one courses and language schools. But then I started teaching at a high school in Italy, in Venice. I come from Venice. And I decided to get what in Italy is it's a master to become a fully qualified teacher. And I decided to apply because it wasn't sure I would have entered it, since 600 students tried the exam to get into the course, and only 55 of us got in. I was very happy and surprised. Wow. Yeah. Then I got my other, yes, let's say it is a degree. It is an in-between between a master and a master's degree. And here we are. I've been teaching since I've been teaching at school since 2007. And here we are. I've always kept contact with Alan because of music at first, and then because of teaching English.
Yeah. So you have an interest in world Englishes. Would you like to introduce what world English is?
I've matured this interest during the course, during my fully qualifying course. And it was thanks to one of my greatest professors, Professor Onisco, who's introduced us to word Englishes as a thing when becoming a teacher. And I've become very interested in it, and I started studying the topic a lot. Well, first of all, English is, some of you may say, this is a mistake. Why word English is? English is because it gives you the idea of the plurality of varieties of English that are all over the world. When us Europeans think of what's English, nowadays it is a little different. But when I was a kid, when I thought of what English is, I thought of British English, of course. But then there is a whole lot of other varieties, that's the correct term, that are from all over the world, since English has spread throughout the world and has become later lingua franca. It changed a lot geographically, and has given birth to a lot of different varieties. Let's think of American. Nowadays, American is present in our houses because of Netflix and YouTube, and it's becoming a variety that is accepted and widespread. But when I was a kid, my teachers told me, no, English is British English, and you have to get RP. You have to acquire the RP. That was basically impossible because I'm not a native. But
do you think because the internet is changing? I mean, Chris, you and me were debating the other week over phrasal verbs, and both of us were arguing about being right, and both of us were right, but both of us were wrong. Do you think the internet's
I was definitely
changing
right.
that?
English, English as the native English you speak, and you speak two different native Englishes.
It's true.
I don't think it will change a lot because yes, it will gain a lot of words that are taken from other varieties, American in particular. But what is changing, is mainly changing, is the English that is spoken as a lingua franca, English that is spoken among people whose native languages are not English. And it is changing, yes, because, for example, me as a teacher often accept my students to say I'm dozing on the couch instead of saying I'm dozing on the sofa, or there was someone on the sidewalk instead of on the pavement, and I accept it because there is no way fighting, no way, and it is pointless fighting it. As why telling them they are wrong? They will tell me, no, it is not wrong. It is American English, and it is. This has changed a lot, and it's changing among us teachers as well.
It's quite a strange thing, isn't it? Because it's one of those things I find myself doing as well. I remember.
Oh yes.
I remember phoning for a taxi, and I was at the local petrol station a couple of miles from where I live, and I said to them down the phone, could you pick me up at the gas station? And
the gas station.
The what?
Yes.
And just gas station came out the mouth. I'm like, oh yeah, hang on. It's like I've no idea how or why I did that.
Well, it's a product, really, isn't it, of us belonging to an international and multilingual and multi-English and pluri-English world. I mean, I know that my English is influenced to a great extent by American English. It's also influenced by Spanish English.
Yes,
and there's mistakes that I will correct in the classroom on a Thursday afternoon and then make myself on a Friday because I'm so used to speaking English with Spanish speakers that I've picked up their mistakes and internalized them. So I've abandoned question tags and just always put no at the end of a question, even though I'll correct my B2 students doing it in the classroom. No.
That's what I do.
Yeah, right. So I say it wrong myself, and then I correct it in the classroom.
Or there was a fantastic one. I know I mentioned it to you guys as well. There was a fantastic country inhabitant, let's just say, on the news the other night. In Ireland, we call them culchies. I am one. People who live in the countryside. And there was this guy they were talking about an Irish breakfast or an Ulster fry or something. And then he was asked, oh, what is your opinion on that for breakfast? And the guy went, oh, I would eat that. As in, future plan would plus the past simple. And I was sitting there listening to that going, yeah, I know what that is. And then I thought about it for a minute and thought about the sentence structure. And it's like, that is just the worst grammar. And I was actually beginning to doubt myself. And I was like, all right, I need to look in this grammar.
When you messaged me about it, and I replied and said, well, that's not a thing. And you said, well, it is. I just heard it on BBC News. And I said, what?
And then
what does it even mean?
And then I thought about it. It was like, would plus the past simple for a future tense. And I'm like, no, that is a thing here. That's an Irish thing here. Yeah.
But it's
I would mark it as the worst mistake ever.
But then I thought, that is horrific grammar when you think about a textbook. But like, I would never teach that. I mean, not in a million years. It was one of those amazing little like world Englishes where Irish English is like, I would eat that.
I once I taught for a year for a couple of years in Southeast Wales, but I taught 1 year particularly where the local, and I do mean local because it was a town in a valley. You did there was a way out and a way in. It was that kind of sort of South Wales rural community where their local dialect used an auxiliary do in the present simple. Okay. So they would say things like he do say in place of he says. Yeah. And trying to teach students to pass a GCSE in literature where they want to quote Shakespeare do say.
You're right.
Yeah, and of course, all of the teaching assistants were local, so they all did the same thing. All of the cleaning staff, the kitchen staff, the admin staff were all local, so they all did the same thing. So it was an uphill battle. I couldn't trying to get native students to speak standard English in terms of writing it, and also saying, look, I'm not devaluing the way you speak. The way you speak is fine, and I don't speak in this teacher voice when I'm with my friends either. But when we're writing an essay about Shakespeare, we need to try to avoid, the localism and go to our more standardized English. And I wonder whether that question about standardized as opposed to standard or a lingua franca might move us into discussing why it's important for students to be aware of this concept of books. It's fascinating to me academically, but why is it useful to our students in the classroom?
As far as I'm concerned, I now teach at what we call a technical school. That is a school in which students study specific subjects, specific topics. For example, I've got students studying tourism. And I think it is very important for them to gain awareness of English as a lingua franca, because it is what they will use one day. If they're going to, if they work in the tourism sector, it is very unlikely that they will speak to a person from London. I mean, the majority of tourists are from all over the world, and the majority of tourists will speak other native languages. And of course, my students who won't speak Moldovan, for example, they will have to employ English to them.
Right.
So it is very important that they understand, and it is my main aim in school, that they understand that the language they will speak will be a means for conveying messages to people whose language is not Italian or nor English. And this is my main concern at school. And it is very important for them to understand they will use English to communicate to the world, because yes, they study other languages. I mean, they study French or German or Russian, but they will encounter people from all over the world whose native language is another. This is very important to me.
What do you say to a student who, if they're sitting in class and they say, "Miss, I would like to learn proper English"?
Yes.
What do you tell them?
This is basically the focus of my thesis when I was studying at university. It is a question I have been asked by students and also parents. They were like, "Where should I send my kid to a study holiday, to have a study holiday where they can learn proper English?" And my answer is there is no proper English. You can send them wherever you want, wherever they speak English, wherever country where English is a native language, L1, we say, because the most important thing is that they can get as much exposure to the language as possible. So I always tell them there is no proper English. There are a lot of different varieties of English, and different varieties, native varieties, and those are word Englishes, American English, Australian English, South African English, Maltese English, and Indian English, and so on. And there is also a non-native. Because there are a lot of different varieties of English as a lingua franca. There are a lot of non-native varieties, and my main aim is for them to get as proficient as they can in order to understand and communicate to people speaking very, very different varieties of the language.
Yeah, I know that speaking personally, I've always kind of, and maybe you'll tell me this is the wrong way of thinking about it, but I always think about these world Englishes as being a little bit like an extension of the varieties within register, the varieties within dialect. The fact that Alan and I speak both of us speak English natively, but we speak different Englishes. The fact that as I was saying, that when I'm teaching those kids in Southeast Wales, then the teacher language that I'm using is very different to the language that I would use with my friends or my brother, or the language I would use maybe in an A2 classroom in Madrid. That language is going to differ.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think World Englishes is another part of that picture, whereby, okay, well, depending on the context, my English is going to shift around. And what I'm expecting to hear is going to shift around.
Well, I think this is more a matter of registers. It is more this. I don't think this is word English is in the yes, maybe the broad sense, but the language that changes according to the situation. I think it's more related to registers. I think
I did mean it kind of as a very broad, what I mean is that it's getting students to switch on to the fact that they're in a context when they speak. So that might be an international context where lingua franca and World English is a thing, or it might be that you're in a classroom or you're in a bar, and therefore the English you use is necessarily going to be different, and the English that you hear is different.
Yes, of course. What I think has changed nowadays with the new generation of teachers. Let's comprehend ourselves and the new generation of teachers. I think we have shifted the attention on for correctness. I personally have switched the attention on instead using the language. They will have to use it one day, and of course there will be different situations with different registers required. But the important thing, and what I always focus on, is that they will have to use it, not to just read the textbook and do the grammar exercises that which are important, because pattern drills are still important in order to gain to automatize the structures. But then you have to keep in mind that they will have to use it. In fact, I always tell them, I always tell my students that way you have to study the language is different, considering your aim. If your aim is passing a Cambridge exam, of course you will have to stick on what is the standard for those exams. But if the aim is going out of school and being able to communicate to all the people they will encounter, the way they're going to study it is completely different. In fact, I always focus on the fact that they have to be exposed to the language when they are at home. They have to watch videos on YouTube. They have to watch whatever they like. And even what we can call broken English. For example, they watch interviews of held by singers and sports talents that who sometimes use not very grammatical structures, false starts, and very strange sentences. But I think it is very important for them to be exposed to authentic language.
I think that's one of the things I do with my students, where instead of, unless it's an exam class, I will tell students, instead of doing a homework, you can use the workbook as a reference for self-study, but instead of doing homework, if they're not an exam class, give yourself 30 minutes a day and just find something to absorb in that language. For myself with Spanish, I always found reading was the strongest thing that improved my level more than anything, even over just watching telly and stuff. Just sitting, reading, and obviously taking my time, but that helped my level. I'm
here vigorously nodding. Sorry, I realized that nobody can see me. I'm here nodding away in agreement.
So what, like in the classroom, how do we prepare our students best for a world of Englishes out there if the likes of Chris and me are arguing over, the definition of a phrasal verb? Like how do we prepare our students for entire, Irish English doesn't equal Welsh English, which doesn't equal South African English or Italian English?
I can tell you about my experience. What I normally do is exposing them to authentic materials as much as I can. Luckily, in my school, we don't have money for a native speaker, but we have a lot of money for technology. In fact, we've got an interactive whiteboard in each class, which is gold for me because it is like a treasure. And everything I do is always cited by the internet. And okay, we're talking about where Alan is from, Belfast. Okay, let's let's watch video on YouTube about Belfast, and I hope and I try to find the video in which a person from Belfast speaks, so they can, for example, they can be exposed to this different accent, different from what they are exposed to in their textbooks. And so videos and I contextualize everything I do, showing them it is an actual thing. And we watch videos, we watch a lot of, we hear podcasts. For example, we were going, because now we're locked down, we were going to see a show, a performance on Nelson Mandela. And I showed them a lot of videos on YouTube, which were actually filmed in South Africa. And so the different, they were exposed to the different accent, which is not only a matter of accent. Sometimes it is also a matter of vocabulary. This is something Alan knows, and all of my students know. My favorite linguist ever is David Christo, and I'm a fan of David Christo. I always watch his lectures online. One of my favorite lectures, he was talking about the fact that varieties sometimes are not intelligible. Even if you're a native. He was in South Africa, he was in Pretoria, searching for the university where he was going to give a lecture, and he couldn't find it. So he stopped someone on the street and he said, please, can you tell me where the university is, please? Oh, yes, you have to go right there as far as the robot. And he said, my God. And he told him, oh, sorry, what is a robot? Oh, you dumb, you don't know what a robot is. And turned out that the robot was the traffic light. And David Christo was,
oh my goodness.
Okay, thank you very much. He actually searched on the South African vocabulary, and he said, saw that robot in South African is the traffic light.
I love that.
Sometimes it is. Yeah, sometimes all my students know about it because it is something I'm really keen on letting them know that it is. I have to tell you, my main concern when I was at university was I want to become like a native. I want to become a native, which is impossible because I'm not a native. I mean,
you can become a native in as much as you can be submitted to the same misunderstandings as David Christo. I was listening to that and thinking of a story that I tell my students, which was as a native in another native country. I was in New Zealand, where I lived for a brief time, and I was opening my bank account, and the lady behind the counter passed me this piece of paper and said something, and I had no idea what she wanted me to do. it wasn't even. I said, "You what?" And so she repeated herself, and I said, "Look, I heard it, but I don't know what any of that means." And then she said, "Could you just take a look at this and sign it?" Oh,
cool.
yes, I can do that. No problem at all. And she said, "Well, that's what I just said." And I said, "But you didn't use those words." And she said, "No." And I said, that would be the reason I didn't understand you then. and I'd have conversations with my employer, and I'd get to the end of a sentence and I'd say, "Rachel, I understood all of those words, but not what you want me to do."
This is reassuring for me.
Negotiate a way through it, and that's before we get on. That's before we even get on to the differences in pronunciation and how that can lead to some very inappropriately funny conversations. But of course, even as a native, I can speak to another native because, and this is what I was meaning by, regional dialect as well as register and everything else. That if you say something in the wrong, or in a way that doesn't suit a context, or the listener doesn't fit the context, then there's misunderstanding. And the same sorts of things can happen. Like I say to my teenagers sometimes, and this is a question of register, that word you just used is absolutely correct, but it makes you sound like my grandma.
You're right.
It's not that the word is wrong. It's completely right in the sentence. The grammar is perfect. I can't fault your English. It's perfect. Mm-hmm. You sound like you're 70 years older than you are.
Yeah.
That's what I was told. I was told when I lived in Norwich. They always told me, "You are so bookish, Claudia." I sounded bookish because the only English I was exposed before going to Norwich was the language that was written in books.
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite interesting. Yeah. So there's always the interesting thing because you'd mentioned the Cambridge exams earlier. So you can do either the complete Cambridge exam in either American English or complete British English. Obviously, since we're in Europe, they tend to prefer British English. But in general, in speaking to classes, I generally go quite easy on the sort of Americanisms. Obviously, in writing, it's a lot easier to spot and it needs corrected a lot more. But because the American TV and YouTube and Netflix is sort of kicked off, I tend to go a bit easier when I'm just having a conversation with someone who English is their L2, but they're using Americanisms. Like, for example, the other night, Claudia, you and me were talking, and you actually corrected yourself. Do you remember?
I remember.
You were telling me the story about leaving Norwich and going to Gatwick. You said the sentence in British English, then you corrected it. The grammar was fine, but you changed the vocabulary to American English.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah. I just think it's funny how we've been influenced so heavily, really.
Yeah, I am. I have to admit, my English is a mixture of British and American because I'm exposed to both. I've studied British English at university. I've got a lot of friends in Great Britain, so they speak British, different Britishes. But I'm also exposed to
Englishes, Britishes.
Britishes, exactly. But I'm also exposed to American a lot. I also have friends there, but I watch a lot of TV. I watch TV series. I watch films, and of course, my language, my vocabulary, my pronunciation is a mixture.
I think what Chris was talking about context and not understanding. One of my most fun ones, because it is heavily ingrained in our language, is the use of the word craic, craic,
which I use because of you.
Yeah, but for people who only think of the white dust as opposed to the Irish word craic, which translates as fun, other natives might not know what I'm talking. I've had Dosses in academies who have said, "You didn't what in class?"
Having the crack.
Yeah, having the crack. I was like, "Excuse me, are we phoning the police here?" I was like, no.
Yeah,
different thing, but perfectly normal to me. Which I think is great fun, to be honest, when you play with it.
Yeah. I can tell you about this anecdote because it is fun. Alan always finds it very funny.
Go for it.
I've always read and watched David Christo's lectures because I think he's not just a very good linguist and a very good the way he conveys contents is amazing. He can make you understand very difficult things in a very simple way, because I think is a very good how can I say, he's a very good speech man. So when I finally got to see David Crystal in Padua, I was as excited as a kid because he was here in Padua, not far from Venice, to give teachers a lecture. And I remember bringing my English as a global language with me, one of his books, and I kept it,
I read it.
in my hands for as long as his lecture lasted. Then I could finally go to him, and I thanked him for his the things he's taught me, and I asked him, I was like a fanboy, saying, "Could you please sign the book for me?" And he was very kind, because he said, "Of course I can, Claudia." And I remember feeling like a fanboy with his or her favorite singer. Yeah, it's a funny anecdote. So you can, yes, I suggest you to watch all of his videos on British Council, on the British Council channel on YouTube, because they are fantastic. Also, who else? If you want to have a deeper look on what word Englishes are, you can you can search for, excuse me if I pronounce it in the wrong way, the American linguist Kashru, who devised the model of word Englishes, which is an old model, but it hasn't been changed a lot. So you can start from Kashru's model, and then you can go on. There are other linguists. There is a Japanese linguist who is very active on investigating word Englishes, and he's Matsuda. Sorry again for my pronunciation. Yes, there are plenty of linguists who have explored this topic.
Oh, that's
nice.
Great. We'll put those references in the show notes, and I wanted to just draw our listeners' attention as well to, there's a free online course which is run by a combination of York St John University and the British Council, called Changing Englishes. Cool. And I followed it in its, I guess it's what we call its beta form during the summer, as they were developing the new version of it. And it talks a lot about these issues of pluralism, plurilinguistic, versus monolithic sort of ideas about what English is. The idea of standard English as being perhaps an idea that maybe has passed its time, but how this in ELT can be advantages, disadvantages of thinking about what this correct English is. So we'll put a link to that as well.
Nice one. So thank you very much, Claudia, for joining us today. That was a great chat.
Thank you for having me.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Grazie mille e arrivederci.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Phrasally Verbocious. If you'd like to get in touch, you can tweet us
at PhrasallyV on Twitter.
You can email us
phrasallyverbocious@gmail.com.
You can check out our show notes online at
phrasallyverbociouspodcast.blogspot.com.
And please like, review and comment us on your podcast subscription service of choice. Goodbye.
Goodbye.